look at a cup that is half full and complain that it's half empty. If you actually work with the government, you do realize that in spite of all the bureaucracy, the place is also filled with a lot of enlightened people who are trying to make a difference. And everywhere you see some progress if you study it, but it appears as if we have to progress very fast on all fronts before we can actually claim our right place. Sir M. Visvesvaraya said technology was the most important, but it was agreed in general that skilled human resources are very important. We have to have a quality improvement in vocational and in higher technical education. The polytechnics are practically going out, and something has to be done because the polytechnics do play a very important role. The quality of technicians at the floor level used to be very good, and because of the decline of the polytechnics, I think we have suffered considerably. We have to address faculty shortage. I already mentioned this. This is probably the most serious problem we have, and making teaching and research more attractive. I think this is important because in India particularly, the ratio at the starting point for when a faculty member comes in, the salary he gets and the salary that a person in the industry gets, in engineering for example, the factor is 1:5 nearly. I mean, there are at least 25 BTech students who graduate from my institute who get more than me when they start, right in the placement office. And they wonder why I still continue in my seat. But I think this is an important thing that has to be addressed. It's not necessary that salaries have to be comparable. There are other kinds of perks that faculty and research workers look for, and I think those have to be met. And finally, create demand-driven technical training centers in the private sector with accreditation. I think this is important. We are often satisfied with certificates, but I think with a good accreditation system, these training centers can be a boon. I want to share some thoughts about, I'm going to talk about innovation and this thing, but I want to share some thoughts about the creative processes identified in recent years, not really very recent. 1981, Sperry got his Nobel Prize. He's a neurophysician. They did experiments on the split brain, and they said that you have two parts to the brain. The left thinks in words and step-by-step logical sequences. The right uses visual images and intuition. And it's the synergy between these two halves that really produces, that is the source of creativity. The creative process, this is a simplification of what they said, essentially has 4 discernible stages. The preparation stage, which is information gathering. I think here it's important that in educational institutions we provide information that's useful. So that I keep telling our faculty that the student anyway is helplessly gathering information. So don't worry if he is not listening to you. But I think it's important on campus we have information available that is meaningful. There is some sifting that faculty has to do. The second stage is the incubation stage, when the right brain tries to see the whole picture, and this is an attempt to understand everything that has been gathered by way of data. And the third stage is the illumination stage, when the right brain thinks it has generated a possible solution. And as far as students are concerned, it happens the day before the exam because they haven't read it before. They collect a lot of information, suddenly they think they've understood the whole thing. But the last step is the verification stage, where experimental verification is important. Personally, I think it was Galileo who introduced it in the West. It's a very important stage, and I think we missed it, and as a result of that we really missed the Industrial Revolution in some sense, because it is only experimental verification that gives the public confidence to put money in industry, and therefore you gain, only with public support you can start large industry. I think we missed that stage, and this is true actually of ancient Greeks and of the Hindus and so on. We had 3 stages, and the illumination stage usually came from a sage, and you never asked questions after he said it, you never verified it. I think we missed it somewhere, and this is true of Western civilization also. I think the favorite anecdote of mine is when Aristotle said women have fewer teeth than men. He had 2 wives and he never asked them to open their mouths and count the teeth. But turned out it was nearly 15th century before Aristotle was actually in writing disproved, and they said women have as many teeth as men. But anyway, the reason I mentioned this creative process is because when it comes to innovation, I think it's been said before, I think Louis Pasteur said it first, and Perkins, the Nobel laureate, said winning a Nobel Prize was chance meeting a prepared mind. There are roles for both the university and the industry. One of the complaints we have in IIT is that we do prepare minds, but chance meets them in the US. And we would rather chance met them here. And I think that's happening now. I think the idea is for the industry to ask questions, not to despair of academics being, in their opinion, scatterbrain, But the idea is if they ask 100 questions, one of those questions may be answered so well that may make up for all the 99 questions for which they didn't get answers. It's a matter of faith, and it has to be, there's no other way of doing it. If the academics knew the answers, they would have told you long ago. In fact, they don't know how to keep quiet. Their problem is keeping secrets. So I think it's really not a question of, I think it's a question of faith. The industry will have to create more and more opportunities for chance to meet a prepared mind. And I think it's important that we prepare minds. I think the university is good at teaching fundamentals, and I think we should stick to that. But at the same time, there must be a lot of exposure to the industry. I'm hoping these things will become real, because we have in IIT Madras, for example, we do a lot of industrial consultancy and sponsored research, about 40 crores of it per year, and out of that 12 crores is consultancy. But a lot of the consultancy has to do with solving short-term problems, not long-term problems. What we would like is for problems to be given to us that are long-term, and not expect us to solve every one of those problems. I mean, 1 in 50 is something that I can more or less promise. But you have to take a chance. But I think it's important that we do this. Otherwise, we are not going to we're not going to create technologies. We're going to be always borrowing and catching up with the West. We have to support prototype development and design innovations. These are expensive, but I think, as was pointed out in Tata Motors and Sumantran's team, actually I think the development of the Indica cost several zeros less than what it costs the West in GM or in Ford. I think it's possible to do this. It's simply a matter of encouraging it and supporting it. We need increased R&D support by the government. The government has got used to academics asking for small amounts. I think we finally got smart. I mean, we are still somewhat modest in our requests, but we've started asking in terms of hundreds and thousands of crores, which they're not used to. But I think it's necessary. R&D is an expensive proposition. There is a notion that it's less expensive in India. It's not all that less expensive, because while the manpower is less expensive, the equipment is actually more expensive. Scientific instruments are more expensive in India than they are in the US. And there's no way you can do competitive R&D without good scientific instruments. We have to encourage industry to invest 2% of turnover. I don't know how many in the industry will agree, but I think right now the investment is well below 1/4% if you take the overall thing. In fact, I remember long ago when Mr. V. Krishnamurthy was chairman SAIL, he said they have to spend 0.5% of their total turnover on R&D. And the then general manager in Ranchi, who had actually, they had a R&D set up there, they had invited us, and the general manager in the steel plant said, how does he expect us to spend so much on academic institutions? We won't get any results from them. And he was really shocked. But I think we have to invest 2% at least before you expect any results at all. Then we have to create centers of manufacturing excellence. They have to be created primarily in the universities, but we need a lot of industry interaction. I think it has to be in the university because it's the 20-year-olds who are really the ones who are not burdened with knowledge. So they come up with ideas that are very different from, once you're a prof, you already know what the practice is. So to that extent, your originality is killed. I think if you're a 20-year-old, you're likely to come up with new ideas. So university campus is the best place. But some excitement has to be created. Right now, a lot of education appears ritualistic, and therefore the students don't come up with as many ideas as they could. Benchmarking is another important aspect. We have to develop subsector benchmark databases. Some of the industries are beginning to do this very well. A technology assessment board is required to eliminate import of second-hand technology. In fact, we have done this for the government several times. We have done analysis in IITs and IISc of technology to be imported, but our experience has been that the technology is imported anyway, regardless of the report that we give the government. We say this technology is not worth importing, don't import it, this price. But I find most of the time, by the time our report gets to them, they've already imported the technology. So this, I think, being so out of phase is not a good thing for a country of our size. We need a study group for movement from products to architecture. It needs to be set up in several universities, then adopt global practices in manufacturing. That's being done already. And create awareness of quality in domestic consumers. I think there we have to play an important role. Unless the domestic consumers are aware of quality. In fact, I was told, I haven't visited Japan, I was told that in Japan, they say if the quality of a product is not good, they say export it. And I think it's the other way around in India. Then the small and medium enterprises and the public sector, the role of small and medium industries has to be emphasized. Small industries in particular are a source of employment. If you have we are going to have the largest manpower for employment in this country, and if they are not going to be employed, then you're going to really have trouble. I think it's important that we concentrate on employment as well. And investing in research and technology again, and establish a manufacturing technology incubation center. This should be tripartite. This should be of particular value to small industries. In fact, in IIT Madras, we are trying to set up a technology park. We've just got land from the Tamil Nadu government. I have 620 acres of wooded land, but this is an educational institution, and I want the values of an educational institution to be preserved as opposed to the market values, which are important in the market, but they shouldn't be imported to an educational institution. The Tamil Nadu government has been kind enough to give me 6.5 acres. They're going to give me another 4.5 acres. We are setting up a technology park. We want industries to come and set up their R&D and interact with us. They'll be allowed space there only if they interact with the faculty and the students in IIT Madras. We're also hoping to incubate companies. The idea is to incubate small companies there till they are comfortable and then send them out. Venture capital seems to be in short supply in India. One talks about it, but hardly anybody wants to support a new venture. It seems as if they want it to mature before they'll support it in most cases. But we are trying to talk to the banks. When we set this up, we will see if we can't also generate some venture capital. Then the cluster approach is probably the only thing the small industries can use, because they can't afford to support research directly by themselves, but in a cluster they can. Finally, the role of public sector in manufacturing industries, their empowerment, competitiveness. I'm told, and there are many studies about it. We also had an extramural talk. The top people in many of the private industries actually served in the public sector for 10 years. The public sector is not able to retain them simply because of unrealistic salary structures. I think it's time that you empowered the public sectors to be able to retain its talent. I think that's an important empowerment. Then you can talk a little less about disinvestment, particularly in this climate. Then finally, manufacturing, again, the employment generation is as important, as I said earlier, as important as competitiveness. The unemployed, however, can only be helped into the labor market in the knowledge economy through various supply side policies without a demand side agenda. I think it's important that we have a very large number of opportunities for educating people. The number of people who are interested in education in India is very high. A proactive model has to be there in order to attract youth to manufacturing sector. I've been talking to a lot of people. The IT sector still plays twice as much as the manufacturing sector. In the IITs, we have now taken a conscious stand that we will let the IT sector come in last for placement. We are going to have the manufacturing sector come in December. Only after the manufacturing sector has come in, employed people, then we go to the ITs. We invite the IT sector to come in and take people. But I think the manufacturing sector also has to pay a little more to get these graduates. The small and medium scale industries can pool resources to nurture youth as solution providers. Many of these kids have very bright ideas. They may not be commercially viable, but out of 10, 20, one of them is viable that will pay off. So I think it's important that we use them as a resource. I think this is just a summary. I've simply said you have an education policy. That's repeated. This is infrastructure policy, education policy, and labor skill development, feeding into all the sectors of the manufacturing industry. You have cost competitiveness, domestic demand, market framework, and regulatory environment. A focused strategy to selected sectors for rapid competitive growth and employment generation. Then innovation in technology and benchmarking. Finally, for the small scale sector, you need clustering, you need IT infusion and technology assistance. This is the broad framework. These are the thoughts I wanted to share with you. My own personal feeling is I think education is going to play a crucial role, because we do need really well qualified people and people who feel they are required. In fact, as far as faculty are concerned, I think we need more meaningful participation in decision making. If you want people to join as faculty, it's not just the salary. I think the current salary is a little more probably will be adequate, but we'll need perks like in terms of conference attendance, in terms of even collecting a personal library. And finally, meaningful participation in national committees. I mean, you get the feeling that you're put in national committees as more or less because you need one person from an academic institution, one person from here and so on. The meaningful participation, I think, can come if there is a correlation between discussions, the final decisions, and the implementation. I think hopefully it will come, because we tend to be somewhat pessimistic, although Sen pointed out, he said, he gave a quotation that said Indians tend to talk about the positives and say a little less about the negatives and so on. My own experience is that Indians tend to look at a cup that is half full and complain that it's half empty. So maybe we'll change our attitude. Maybe we will finally take off. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Anant Iyer, and I'm here from Purdue University. I'm happy to be part of this conference. It gives me great privilege to have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Sumantran. Dr. Sumantran is the Executive Director of the Passenger Car Business Unit and Engineering Research Center at Tata Motors. Now, I should pause a minute and say, I almost feel like a faculty member who has come with a presentation and then realized the world changed, because yesterday there were 3 newspapers delivered to my door, and all of them in the front pages had a discussion of Dr.